Hi, I'm Juan Lavista. I'm Microsoft Chief Data Scientist and Vice President, and I'm here in Sachin's and Syal's podcast. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the OchakDe Show. We're Silicon Valley's first business podcast for teens, hosted by a teen. I'm Sachin Syal. I'm a 16-year-old award-winning entrepreneur and podcaster from the Bay Area, and I interview remarkable and influential people from all walks of life so we can learn from their stories and level up ourselves. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of 3doshas.com. We're a lifestyle coaching company, and we transform lives through coaching principles inspired by yoga and Ayurveda. The purpose of the show is to inspire you to go for it, which is what ochakde, it's a Punjabi word, which is what that means. And today we have a special guest and a special co-host. My brother Sujay will be co-hosting. And off to you, Sujay.
Hey everyone, I'm Sujay. I'm also a co-founder of Tridoshas, and I'm actually currently studying data science and stats at UCLA. So I'm super excited to learn all about tech and AI from Juan in this interview.
Awesome. Well, yes, you guys can see him. He's there smiling with that nice virtual background. That is Juan Lavista Ferres, the Vice President, Chief Data Scientist at Microsoft. He runs the entire AI for Good lab. He joined in 2009. He's also a Singularity Group expert in data science and AI, and he's also a TEDx speaker. So Juan, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the OchakDe Show. Let us know what's new and exciting in your life.
Thank you both for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here. Exciting for us, again, is we continue to work in areas where we can apply AI to help with some of the world challenges. Sadly, since October last year, and thanks to large language models, a lot of problems that we thought, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago that it would take many more years to solve, now we are very excited to revisit them, particularly areas of a lot of text, correct? So natural language processing is very hard, significantly harder than vision problems. Like it's more difficult to work with text than to work with images, because in images, all the information and all the content that is needed from a AI or algorithm perspective is part of the image or part of the video. In the case of the text, it's not. And that's why working with text is extremely more difficult. And now, thanks to large language models, now we have a lot more power, and we're certainly exploring a lot of these problems of what are the capabilities and what are the limitations of these large language models towards some of the problems. So we're very excited about that.
Hey guys, I want to talk about something about my mentor and friend who you may know, Lloyd Lobo, because I actually interviewed him on the show. He released a book that became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. The book is From Grassroots to Greatness, 13 Rules to Build Iconic Brands with Community-Led Growth. He's curated wisdom from both big brands and hyper-growth startups, including Apple, Atlassian, CrossFit, Harley-Davidson, HubSpot, Nike, Red Bull, and many more to teach you to build an audience and turn it into a community and movement. I personally find all the art and like the design and format on this book super catchy. I think we can all learn from the graphic design that was used in here and how Lloyd and his team were able to make this a masterpiece. There's a quote by Lloyd that I really like. It goes, yesterday's innovation becomes tomorrow's commodity. But if you build a community, you won't become a commodity. So think about that. That's spot on. I really love that quote. If you want to get a copy, you can go to fromgrassrootstogreatness.com or just go to Amazon and search up From Grassroots to Greatness. Enjoy the episode, guys. Got it. Very exciting. Everything at Microsoft we're going to talk about. I think Microsoft is a genius company because they invested in predicting some of the most viral AI and tech stuff that's happening right now, that's trending. But I know I read into your story and I saw that this is incredible, guys. Extraordinary. He learned how to code at 8 years old. I saw that in your video. Can you tell us more about it? I think it's phenomenal. It's very remarkable. So how did you learn how to code at 8? And that's like, this show is for teens, but you weren't even a teen at 8 years old. So how in the world were you able to do that, Juan? Let us know.
I was very lucky in the sense that my parents had the vision to buy me a computer. At that point, this is the name of the computer is the TK90X. That is the Brazilian version of the Sinclair Spectrum that you guys are likely too young to remember. So, remember, but these were like back in the 80s was basically like the first computers that were affordable for families, basically, where you have 48 kilobytes of RAM, and it was basic, was like as soon as you put it on the computer, the only thing that you could do was just coding basic. And so at the beginning, like they gave us the computer, and of course there was nothing, like there was no expert at home, there was no computer classes, there was nothing basically. So the only way to use that was to try to learn how to code. So with some books that the father of a friend of mine gave me, I started practicing and understanding things like fors and go-tos and print, and that's basically how drove me into computer science. So
yeah, I've never really heard a story. I've heard people saying like, oh, I started when I was a teenager and I found a coach and a mentor, but 8 years old is pretty amazing. And on top of that, I learned that through the Microsoft video they made of you. And I just want to say that whoever filmed that and the production team that made that is pretty amazing, because that was a super cool video.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I mean, Juan, we're all inspired by your story. I mean, the fact that you had a passion for tech and computer science at such a young age is amazing. It really, truly is. And what's even more amazing is that you're running the AI for Good lab at Microsoft. And so I think I've looked into your guys' vision. I think it's a great initiative. I think it's amazing that cutting edge companies like Microsoft are putting AI towards good use, especially amidst all these concerns of, oh, AI is going to take over the world. There's so many negative aspects of AI. And so can you tell me about some of the projects you've been working on as part of this lab, and how you've been able to leverage technology to improve people's lives?
Yeah, so I can tell you, like, we have different verticals. So one of the biggest verticals we have, and an area where we continue to invest a lot, and we see a lot of potential, is using satellite data for different problems. A lot of these problems are related to disaster response. So as soon as you have a natural disaster, one of the most important aspects for a lot of organizations on the ground is understanding what is the situation, how big is the problem, which areas have been affected, and usually that requires people on the ground. And if you have a vast area, that takes a lot of effort and usually takes a lot of time. And at that point, especially if you have like something like an earthquake, every minute counts. Every minute is important. So using high resolution satellite data, using AI on top of high resolution satellite data, we can do a very good damage assessment capability. For example, in the case of Turkey, in the earthquake of Turkey and Syria, using this technology, we were able to create maps and identify every single house that was affected or destroyed. And these maps provide fundamental information for people on the ground to see where they need to deploy people. And we're still working on technology because we want to continue improving in the time to response, basically. So for us, we are trying to see if we can get the whole pipeline running within 24 hours. And right now, that has the biggest challenge is to have satellite data by then, correct? And we have a very good close partnership with Planet Labs, that is one of the main satellite data companies. But in reality, that there's a lot of opportunities using satellite data. Also using satellite data, for example, we are building the first, what we call the Global Renewables Watch. That is the first map of understanding how much renewable energy we have in the world and what is the trend of renewable energy by country, basically. Like identify every single solar farm and every single wind farm. And unfortunately, that data doesn't exist today, meaning that it exists in pockets, and usually those pockets are not comparable. Like some countries report that data, some can't, but the way they report it is not usually apples to other countries. It's challenging. Usually, some organizations takes them like there's a 2-year lag to report that data. And solar farms and wind farms, the good thing about that is that they're big enough to see from the space, which means that what we're doing is we're partnering with also with Planet and with the Nature Conservancy Group, and we're using AI to map every single wind farm and solar farm across the entire world. Why this is important? Because in order for the world to actually have, the only solution we have to control climate change is we need to reduce fossil fuels. Like 70% of emissions come from energy. So a rapid transition to renewable energy is key. But in order for us to understand that, we need to understand whether we're making progress or not, and which areas are we making progress, which areas we're not making progress, and also provide countries and organizations fundamental information about those targets. And that's why we've been working on that. The technology that we actually, going back to Turkey, that technology of disaster response and disaster preparedness, we started to work last year on Ukraine because we wanted to have a damage assessment. We were working with the United Nations to understand the damage assessment of Ukraine, particularly in areas like schools, water facilities, and hospitals, because all those entities are protected by the Geneva Convention. And the UN wanted to understand whether these buildings were being affected or not. So we created a technology to monitor every single school, water facility, and hospital across Ukraine, and monitor them from space. So that's a big area for us. Satellite data and computer vision in general is a big area. Very similar problem, but very different from a societal point of view, is anything that has to do with medical imaging. Again, it has nothing to do with satellite data or disaster response, but from a pure AI and data science perspective, working with medical imaging on CT scans and working with satellite data are very similar problems. So we have a lot of work on that area. We're working with Johns Hopkins University in pancreatic cancer to see if we can do early detection of pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is likely the most lethal cancers that exist. And while other cancers, the probability of death has been has been decreasing in the last 2-3 decades. If you look at pancreatic cancer, the chances of survival for the next 5 years once they detect pancreatic cancer is pretty low, and it hasn't changed. And the reason why it hasn't changed is because usually when they detect pancreatic cancer, it's usually too late. So we are working with them to see, is there any chance we can actually help them detect them early? Because if they can detect them well, when the tumor is less than 2 centimeters, they can do surgery and there's a good chance that that person will survive. But anyway, those are some of the projects that we're working. We work a lot in acoustic data, in camera traps for biodiversity, like detecting the animals. For example, we have a great project now in the Amazon to do a full assessment of species in the Amazon, like from acoustic data and from computer vision data from camera traps. Those are some of the examples. I have more if you want. I can continue talking for a long time, but those are some of the projects that we work.
Awesome. I mean, Juan, see, what I find so inspiring is that you're using all this technology in a way that we're not really taught in school, right? I mean, we're sitting here in class learning, computer vision on OpenCV, doing some TensorFlow scripts, and we're not thinking about how we can use like large satellite data sets to solve large scale problems. And this brings me to like a 2-step question that I really have for you. It shows that data science is changing. The field of data science and AI is changing very fast. And so if somebody like me, a young person like me, would want to work for a company or a lab like AI for Good, what skills or suggestions do you have for us to remain relevant? Because there's a lot of concern about, ChatGPT is going to replace data science jobs. Data science is not a growing market, but clearly that's not the case. And data science has so much potential. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that in general.
Let me start first by saying that no, data scientists are certainly required, and if anything, technologies like ChatGPT will significantly increase the power of data scientists and increase the number of problems that we can solve, which means that you will need many more data scientists.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you should never think that this technology will replace. I've seen some people online claiming that we will no longer need developers. Of course, that's not true. So in general, people need to understand that what this technology provides is an amazing capability to solve many more problems. And if you ask me what is amazing about technology like ChatGPT is we'll likely be able to reduce the barrier to get into programming, which is great. This is a change in paradigm that also happened back in the 70s, and I wasn't born at that point. I'm not that old, but like people use Fortran or people use like the cards or use even assembler basically. Once you move to like GUIs and graphic interface and more modern languages like Python, a lot of people thought the same thing. It's like, well, now you have these, you no longer need people. Like, you still need the number of programmers actually, the requirement and the amount of programmers that actually continue to increase almost exponentially in the world. Basically. So, no, first question is you should never think about that these will replace. Certainly will empower people. So I recommend everybody to try to use this technology to help them be more productive. Basically. So I think that's important to say that and set for the record. To your question, first, of course, all of these problems require a very good understanding of technology like AI or machine learning. Right? So that technology, and again, our lab has been focused a lot in areas like computer vision because that's where we see a lot more potential. Like a lot of data in the world is stored in this format. There's these very rich data sets, including satellite data that hasn't been really used for solving this problem, and they have a huge amount of potential. So that's the technology I would say is very important. One thing that is also important for all of us to understand is when we're working on these problems, we will never work on these problems alone. We always partner with subject matter experts. There's not a single problem on my lab that doesn't partner with a subject matter expert, because our expertise is in data science, is in AI. We are not experts in areas like disaster response. We are certainly not experts in cancer. We are not experts in almost any of the problems that we work. But from a data perspective, all of these problems are very similar. So in order for us to have an impact, what you need is to have this collaboration with subject matter experts that understand the problems, understand the data, and can work with you. So I always recommend people to have these networks and to see how those things that you're learning, how can you potentially use them for solving other problems. But in order for us to solve other problems, we first need to understand what are those problems, what is the data behind the problems. So having those connections with experts that are working on this problem. And we can do a lot, we can help a lot, because unfortunately, today, majority of the people that have the expertise, of the AI expertise, or even coding expertise, majority of that talent, majority of the AI talent today work in the tech sector or financial industry. So, and the world has a lot of big challenges, right? But the people that are working to solve majority of those challenges do not have those skills. And that's why we exist, meaning that we exist because we want to try to help fill that gap. But that gap is huge, meaning that there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of organizations around the world that are trying to solve very important problems for the world that do not have those skills. So I always say, try to learn about those problems, try to work with those people, because certainly there is a lot of people out there that need our help from an AI and data science or programming perspective, and we can definitely make an impact there. So.
Yeah, I think what you said, like about how Microsoft wants to solve problems and you get data for the problems, I think it's a very commendable mission of Microsoft. It's not just me saying, I mean, millions of people also agree with me. But like, this is a question that I'm really excited to ask you, Juan, because I mentioned it in the beginning. I think that it's like super genius that Microsoft like predicted and decided to invest in OpenAI before it was always well known, but before it got like so viral because of ChatGPT. How is Microsoft so good at predicting these things? And in your opinion, as like a top executive that's already rose through the ranks, what are the new important trends in AI? It's a lot of questions, but yeah. And what does the future look like? And then also, tech enthusiasts like my brother and I, how are we supposed to keep up with all the cool stuff that's happening right now? Because there's so many articles, so many things coming out there, stuff on social media, your family, your friends telling you stuff. How do you get the accurate data and real information of what's happening?
So let me start answering a few of your original questions.
Okay.
I do give a lot of credit to a lot of people, very bright people here at Microsoft, to have the vision to invest in this technology early on. And not just from an OpenAI perspective, like Microsoft has been working on AI for the last 30 years, basically.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
It has been working even in large language model for some time too. So I have to give a lot of credit to many very incredible researchers and leaders here in Microsoft. To your second question, yes, I do think we, especially after ChatGPT started in October last year, there has been a step function in the technology in many ways, and there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of noise. I always tell people, like even in my team and to my friends, is that there's from a technology perspective, the world is changing and the world is moving really fast. But at the end of the day, it's important to focus on the problems. The tools are great, but the tools by themselves are useless if you're not going to use them for solving a problem. So I always recommend people to say, okay, now we have the tools. It's important to learn how to use the tools, but don't get lost in the tools by the tool's sake. Always look like, okay, I have this tool now, this new tool now, of the problem that we're trying to solve. Can I actually use the tool to solve them, or what other problems I could potentially solve them with this? But focus on the problem. It's very important to focus on the problem, and it's very important to try to solve problems. And that's easier to say than do. Like, as humans, we are addicted to complexity. We like complex projects. We like complex things. Right? Like this is the reason we put a man on the moon before we added wheels to your luggage. And it's very important to recognize that addiction, because all of us, we love that addiction. We like very cool tools and but we need to abstract ourselves, focus on problems, and also focus on simple solutions for those problems. If there's one lesson that I learned working on this space, is if you want to impress people and look intelligent, your solutions can be complex. But if you want to have something that actually make an impact in this world, your solution needs to be simple. And building simple solutions is hard, not only because it's really hard, but also because majority of people do not want to solve problems using simple solutions. So that's a big lesson from ours. Like, we need to move away from that addiction to complexity.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think a lot of people assume that like when someone talks about data science and AI, like, oh, that's so complex, dude, you have to be like super smart, and you probably do. But I think what you said about making it simple and then solving a problem with that, it's much better than making something complex and having the tools. But if you're not solving a problem, it's pretty much useless. So I think that's spot on, Juan. Learning so much, and I'm gonna pass it on to my brother for another question.
Thanks, Sachin. So Juan, it actually, my next question was, what was the most difficult project that you've worked on, and what was the most rewarding one? It could have been the same one, it could have been a different one, data science related or not. I just wanted to see what project was really, really difficult for you, but in the end you realized that it was worth it, it was worth the time and effort, and it ended up having a good outcome in the end.
I think I don't think I have one preferred problem either way. I can tell you from a challenge perspective, the one that actually was somehow amazing was working in COVID. We worked very closely with the Department of Health We started tracking COVID back in early January 2020, before it was in the US and before this became a big news. And we did the original models trying to predict, like, and compare these to things like SARS and MERS. And I think if you ask me what was different at that point, is we had that level of urgency. We were working with the Department of Health, trying to provide data, trying to understand capacity of hospitals. And there was a huge uncertainty. Everybody was working from home. It was a challenge time, basically. So I have very fond memories now, looking back, because you realize that what was amazing for me was how many people around the world, basically, whether we are a computer scientist or engineer, like, everybody wanted to help, correct? Like, majority of researchers stopped doing what they're doing and just start working to help better understand COVID and try to see what they could do from a COVID perspective. So I think it's a big lesson that a society can bring the best of us. It also can bring the worst of us in many ways. There was a lot of disinformation, a lot of people that misuse the news on COVID, and in many ways create even more disinformation. That was challenging. But I do think that when I look back, I feel proud of society, the fact that everybody stopped doing what they were doing and say, hey, let's work together to solve the problem.
Definitely. And I think, I'm seeing like an overall theme which you're talking about. And I feel like the theme is that everybody, or most people, are focused just on the complexity in technology, right? But at the end of the day, problems are solved from an interdisciplinary approach, when people from so many different industries and backgrounds come together. And so I think COVID is an example of when the problem was so large that people really had no other choice but to come together, and people did come together by themselves, and that did eventually create impact. And so I'm learning a lot from this, and I'll pass it on to Sachin now. This is great.
Yeah, so we have some time, but I think we're going to wrap up here in a bit. But these are the last two questions that I asked all my guests. But before that, Juan, you mentioned that Microsoft worked with the United Nations and also during COVID, the Department of Health. Tell me if I'm correct or not. Next to your shoulder, is that the United Nations logo? Right here in your virtual. Is the virtual background next to you? Is that the United Nations logo right there next to your shoulder?
That is the United Nations logo. That was the
Awesome.
I had to give a talk at the UNITU for Good Summit
nice.
In like 5 weeks ago. So.
Oh, nice. I think I saw on YouTube you had like an in-person interview with you, and there was a table and there's some guy talking to you. You guys were standing up, I believe, right?
Yes.
That okay? Nice. Yeah, and I think it's commendable work that Microsoft works with, even during COVID, the Department of Health. I think most of the people that I know that work at Microsoft always say good things about it. Like, it's innovative, it has a great mission, and the people like working there, and they get a lot of benefits, and they like their team. So I think it's awesome. I mean, I know there's so many like kids like my brother that are hustling to get like a data science internship. So whenever they ask me, I will say, check out my interview with Juan if you want to learn more about that. But going on to the last two questions to all my guests, the first one is, what's your best all-time advice for teens? And according to my YouTube analytics, which is actually data science, I have international audience, which is pretty cool. So what's your advice for teens? Let's start with that.
So I think that it's difficult to give advice in very general ways, but again, I do think first is from a learning perspective, we need to understand that coding and AI is not something that just computer scientists should use. No matter what career you have, whether you're a medical doctor, you are a historian, you are a biologist, or you're a physicist, you're going to be using tools, AI and coding for anything in your work. And unfortunately, I think society hasn't evolved that way yet. I think we need to have if you ask me, I think coding should be required at the high school level. I'm teaching coding. I'm teaching coding to elementary school kids, and I can tell you that everybody can learn code. And so I do think that my first recommendation would be learn how to code. Do not think the people that say that we will no longer need coders in 5 years, because that's not going to happen. But learn how to use the tools. And I think the second recommendation is more general, is that learn your passion. It takes time to learn your passion, but there's a lot of power in having a passion to solve a problem or an area you want to solve. It takes time to identify. You can change passions, and that's completely fine. But there's a lot of power in having a passion, particularly if that passion is related to solving a particular problem. That, along with curiosity and along with learning how to ask the right questions, those are usually superpowers to help with some of the world challenges.
So passion, curiosity, and asking the right question to mentors, that's literally like all the coaches that people hire. It's like 3 things that you already explained there. So thank you for sharing that. Last question of the day. My guests love this question, is what was your favorite part of being on this podcast today?
No, I really enjoy your questions. I think both of you understand the subject and understand the problems, and clearly you have a lot of drive, in the sense that when I was your age, I was certainly not thinking about having a startup or having a business. So I have to give you guys a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
So very excited to be part of this.
Awesome. We appreciate you joined. Co-host, anything else you'd like to add?
Juan, I really enjoyed speaking with you. Learned a lot about AI, data science, problems in general. I definitely think it's going to have an impact on how I approach learning in the future, especially in college. I've actually been involved. We have a club at school called AI for Good. And I was sort of involved in my first year, in my freshman year, but I think that now I'm gonna dive even deeper because I think working with stuff like satellite data and computer vision is awesome. And yes, it's complex. I do get a little bit of a thrill out of that, but most importantly, I'm gonna keep in mind that I need to just approach the problem the simplest way, and see what we can do. Just go along with the journey. So thank you for that, and Sachin, good job as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you, guys. Ochakde, if you're still wondering, it means go for it. It's a Punjabi word. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.